Okay, all right, so just for our little history minute here at the beginning, our values minute. This seems like a really strange thing to say to us today. The most sacred of the duties of a government is to do equal and impartial justice to all citizens. But this is kind of a new idea. Prior to, you don't have to go back very much further before this, and the king's got his buddies and they get a different set of rules to follow than kind of the rest of the folks. And so this thought that everyone should live by one set of rules is kind of a new idea. All right, that was kind of short today. We'll save that. We are picking up where we left off. And so if you, what is today, October 25th. So if you followed along, you can just keep going where you are. Otherwise, go look to October 25th on the blog and you can download the file where we left off last time. You'll remember that what we're trying to do is we are trying to build out this user form so that we can edit one product. So we've got product information, it's plenty wide over here. Can't even really see it all at one time on the screen unless we make it really small. So the idea is to make a user form that will let us show all this information, let the user edit that information, and then save it, do some validity checks on it, and then decide whether we actually write it back to the worksheet or not. And we've gotten started with that. So I should be able to come and open up the form called FRM prod and just hit the play button or F5 if I'm on that module, and it should open up that form. And so here's the form. We're not doing so much with it so far. We've got the product ID and we've got the name of the product. That seems like a strange name, Spearmint. I'm not sure what that is, but and then we put some data validation in here. So if we delete the name altogether and try to save it, it'll tell us that's not, we're not allowed to do that. All right, so we have experienced now really 3 different controls. Someone remind me what a control is. Seems like such a weird word, but what's a control? Does anybody remember? I should have put this on the midterm, darn it. So a control is just the little tools that we use to put onto the form. So they're objects or visual objects that we use to build our form with. And so we've got 3 different kinds of controls here. We have a label control, we have a text box control, and we have a command button control. So we're going to go ahead now and look at some of the different kinds of controls. Okay. So the next one is called a combo box. Why don't we go ahead and use the combo box for, let's see, let me come to where it says lists over here. So let's do it. Why don't we do this for the category? So let's do it for the manufacturer. What do you have more, categories or manufacturers? And they're about the same. Okay, so let's just say, listen, when we're editing a product here, we just want the user, we don't want the user just typing in the name of the manufacturer. We want the user to pick the manufacturer from a list of our manufacturers. And so that's what a combo box is going to be good for. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'll bring another label on here and I'll just put manufacturer. So I'll change, I'm not going to worry about changing the name of this label because the reason I'm interested in never changing the name of these objects is if I'm going to refer to them through code. When I'm looking at the code, I want to have some sense of what kind of object is that and which object is that. So I'm going to be very careful that I change the name of anything I'm going to refer to by code. But in this case, this is just going to be static text on the form that says manufacturer. And so I'm never going to change that. I won't be referring to it through code. So I won't worry about changing the name. I'm just going to change the caption to say manufacturer. And now I'll bring in a combo box. So combo box is the next one over past the checkbox or the text box. And I'm going to go ahead and draw that in. I don't know that it needs to be that wide or that tall. That should be okay. Okay, now when we're doing either the label or the text box, we're just going to look at the data that's right there on the form and we're going to drop it in there. Or the data that's on our worksheet, and we're going to put it up onto the form. But for this one now, we have to start off by saying, first, let's build the list of possible values that are in there. And so going to go ahead and come to my code just by double clicking on the form. I'm opening up my code, and I guess I'm going to say show data. So here when we're saying show data, let's go ahead and fill up that combo box. Oh, but I need to give the combo box a name first. Let me come back and name my combo box. This is going to be my manufacturer, so I'm going to call it CBO MFR. I'm tempted to call it CBO manufacturer, but that's more typing than I want to do. So I'll just call it CBO MFR. That'll be the name of this object. Okay, so we are going to need to put the possible values into the combo box right when we're getting ready to show this data. So let's go ahead and do that next. Maybe I'll put a comment here, load the values, the legal values into the manufacturer combo box. All right, now it looks like I have that list set up over here on my lists sheet. So I've got I already have here kind of built in the list of different manufacturers. Are they even sorted? They're not sorted alphabetically. So I think I am just going to take a minute and sort these alphabetically. So of course, that's just Excel. I'm assuming you know how to sort data. I'm going to make sure that I don't sort anything but that column. So we got the column highlighted. I'll sort A to Z. Do not expand the selection and sort. Okay, so now I've got those alphabetically. So as I read down this list, they're going to go into my list alphabetically. I think that's going to be a good way to have them. We're column E over there. Just going to leave that up on my screen. Okay. Sorts on the data tab. So I just selected just the data. It wouldn't be the end of the world if they weren't sorted for you. This would all work just fine. They just wouldn't be sorted in the list that's dropping down. Okay, so now I'm just gonna need a process that reads across this data and then plugs those into my combo box. So let's just go ahead and quickly build a loop that will do this. At the very top of my procedure, I'm gonna dim R as a long integer. R equals 2. So you might want to undo if it did for you. But what I did was I highlighted just this column. You're talking about the sorting? Yeah. And then when I said sort, it said expand selection, and I said, no, I want to continue with the current selection. In other words, don't try to sort adjacent rows here, just sort the row that I have, the column I have selected.
So does it just happen to be that your category section is like already sorted?
That may be true, yeah. Other questions on the sort? Yes. Oh, yeah. In fact, what would we do to sort? If you were wondering, I wonder what the VBA code is for sorting, what would you do? Yeah, just record yourself doing that sort. It turns out sort's a little more complex. It's not just like sort this column, refer to the column.sort. It's an object that you got to tell us things like, does it have a list? What direction do you want to sort it, and so forth. So yeah, it might make sense for us to do that, but we're not going to do it inline for this example. Other questions? All right. So I'm just going to make a loop that runs down through this data until it hits a blank row, and then I'll start off just by printing those values. And once I've got the loop done, then I'll kind of take the next step to actually get those values going into the combo box. So this is a loop we should be a little bit familiar with. We've written it a few times here in class. So I'm going to do until, let's see, and the name of that, it says lists on the tab. Oh, and good news, it's also the code name as well, right? So To refer to this worksheet through code, I'm going to use not the value in parentheses. That's what's in the showing on the tab. I'll use the code name. And for this one, it's exactly the same. So do until lists dot cells row number R column E dot value. But so far we've done like is equal to blank, but there's actually a function called is empty that I can pass this to. Is empty. Let's try that again. There you go, is empty. And it just returns true or false based on whether whatever expression it's looking at is empty. And I'm not sure exactly what empty means, except that a cell with no value in it does evaluate to empty. I think so. I almost always use just double quotes, but I'm trying to give you a little more exposure here. So let me just try question mark is empty of the active cell. So right now, I'm not sure what the active cell is, but apparently it's not empty. Let me come to one that is empty. And that's returning true. So is empty is just a function that will return true if it's looking at an empty cell. You could probably use it on variables as well. A zero length string variable would be empty, and I'm not sure exactly what else would be empty. All right, so go ahead and put a loop here. Make sure that I'm incrementing my row. Row equals row plus 1. And I always like to put a do events in here. Someone remind me what do events does? That's right. Just says each time you go through this loop, just check and see if I'm trying to get your attention, Mr. Interpreter. I know you're happy to have something to do, but just check and see. Then you can use the little pause button to get into it for sure. Okay. So at this point, let me just go ahead and do a debug.print. Maybe I'll print R, and then I'll also print the value of that column. So list cells, the same expression that I'm using to control when to stop this. So if I run this, it should just put into my immediate window that list of manufacturers. And it looks like it did. Okay, now that's not where I want them to go, but now, since it's so easy to see, did I do the loop right by writing it out to the immediate window? Now I'm thinking, okay, great. I've got the structure in place to process each one of those. Now let me just go ahead and convert it to get it to go into the combo box. So instead of doing a print on that, I'm just going to call one of the methods of the combo box. I called it CBO. In fact, here's a little trick. There's a shortcut to get to the form that contains the code we're writing. So we're writing this code in the module of the form. What's the name of this form? Like frmprod, I could type in frmprod dot, and it would give me a list of things I can do for the form itself. But there's a shortcut to get to it that says, listen, I don't care what the name of it is. It's the form that's holding this. Kind of like we can say, like this workbook. It's the workbook that holds the code. Same thing for the form. That one's a little different. It's called me, me dot. And that will then give you a list of everything you're allowed to type after, for a user form. And now, since I know that that's a combo box, I'll type CBO, and then I can say, there it is. And make sure I've got the combo box that I'm after. So that is going to be the combo box, and it's going to have a method. Oh my gosh, it's the very first one, add item. So instead of printing that value, I'm just going to add that item to the combo box. So now that should give me a list of choices to choose from in that combo box. Any questions on this code? Go ahead.
Two questions.
Is it bad if we don't make it dynamic? You mean instead of looping until you hit a blank cell, just like use a for loop from 2 to 138?
Just say the combo box is equal to this area.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't going to talk about that approach, but I'll show you that to answer that. And the answer is yes. Because I think the whole idea here is that we would like the user to be able to say, oh, we've got a new product and it's a manufacturer we've never had before. I want to be able to add that manufacturer into the list. And we really want them to be able to do that without having to touch the code. And so that's why I would prefer to do it this way. But what the student is asking is that there's a different way to refer to actually populate this list. Instead of doing it through code, there's actually just a property that we can set. And I think it's called the row source. So let me make sure that I'm just going to point this to you because it can be quite handy. Let me go ahead and get back to my user form. And whoa, I think I just created a new user form. Stand by for just a minute, folks. Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so if I have this, if I have my combo box selected, I can come down to like, is it called row source? Yeah, row source. I can just put in right here, I can put, let me zoom in because that's kind of hard to see. Windows plus. So there's this row source property that would allow me to put a reference to a range. I could take a particular, and this is just the same notation you would use to refer to a range in a formula. So name of the sheet, exclamation point, name of the range, range, cell, so some cell, colon, some other cell. And just putting that range in there would give the row source here. So, and you can set that dynamically as well. So that's a different way to put the values to choose from there. Okay, I got a couple questions out there. So let's take the question here and then we got some others. Go ahead.
And so going along with that, you said that was Excel notation, so not VBA, meaning you could say like active cell.index cell down.
That's correct. You could not use, you don't use VBA Express. Let me go ahead and actually show this all the way for you. So stand by. I'm going to take off the part that puts this in. Let me just disable this part. If I run this now, you'll see I have no options in my dropdown. And let me just go ahead and put this range in here. Let's see. So let me just make a formula, sum. And that should give me that range, E2 to E138. Okay, so now if I'm back on my form and setting the property, see, do I have it? Got to have manufacturer selected and row source. Scroll down. QRST row source. The name of the sheet is lists, exclamation point, and then the expression. So now we're just saying, what's the source for the rows in this combo box? Just look on this sheet and look to that range. So now go ahead and run this form and I should get that list right in here. So, if you're dealing with something that's going to be static, then you can just refer to that in the row source. But I think it's, just for this example, reading it off the worksheet, I'm going to prefer. Let me go ahead and stop this code. I'm going to come back and take off that row source. Because I don't want to, otherwise I'll get a duplicate because that, well, I'm not sure exactly what would happen if I tried to do it both different ways. But I've got my code that's looking at that one line at a time and filling it up when the thing loads into memory. There's a question back here in the corner. Okay, excellent. All right. So, so now I should be able to run this form and still see the values in it, but these are getting put in by my add item method. Okay, now I still, however, need to actually show the value that we're actually looking at. So we come up here to one that I can actually see. Where's manufacturer? Manufacturer is in column D. So similar to when we're showing the data, when we're reading off a value off the cell, I'm going to do the same thing. After I fill in the values, I'm going to put the set the visible or set the value for the combo box or the manufacturer. Okay, so the name of the combo box is CBOMFR. CBOMFR. Dot, and now I'm just going to set the value of it. And I will set that equal to whatever is in column D or column number 4. So by setting the value of a combo box equal to one of the items that's on the list, it's going to select that and show that value in the combo box. Questions? Just make sure that works. So that should come up now saying cut down calls when I'm on product number 2 here, product in row 2. So it's coming up there, and you'll notice that when I drop this list down, it actually shows it selected in the list. But let me put it back to cut down calls and just put like a couple of X's on the end. It's letting me type some other stuff in here. You think that's going to let it save? Oh, we actually aren't saving it yet. We don't have any code to save this data. So let's go ahead and write the code to save the data from this. And then we're going to explore if it allows us to do that. So working with the combo box is going to be really similar to the text box. We're just going to reverse the direction of the flow of the data. So here's our function save data. We're setting save data to true. Oh, okay. So we'll do it right here. So we're just going to reverse these. And I'm going to write back out to the worksheet. So I'm going to say my worksheet, the value on the worksheet is going to be equal to what's on the form. So now when we save the data, we're going to say, hey, just look at whatever is the value in that combo box, whichever one the user has chosen, and write that back out to the cell. But my question is this going to, our hope here is that it would restrict what the user can type in to only be something that's in the list. And I'm not entirely sure that we're there yet. So it's going to come up with cut down calls. I'll change it to cut down calls XX and say, okay, yeah, what good is that? So let's type whatever we want in there anyway. Well, it turns out that that is just a property of the combo box. So I'll choose the combo box here, and I'm going to come down here, and there's going to be something. I thought it was called limit to list, and now I don't remember. There's a way for me to restrict this to the list. I just don't remember what the property is. I don't think it's locked. Maybe it's match entry. What are my choices here? Oh, this is how we type it. So match entry is how we type it in. First letter, I guess. And then let's change match required to true. Let's see what that does. So let's put the value in there. Let me pick air guide. Yeah, that's what match required is what it is. So if I try to type something in that's not allowed, it's really not accepting it. Now I wonder if I was to say okay, would it still take it? I hope the answer is no. Invalid property value. So it's not letting me move on until I get this to actually pick one from here. And then we've changed it out here to the worksheet. Okay, excellent. Any questions here? I think we're done with the combo box. So thinking about the project, by the way, in my mind today, while I'm working through these examples, I'm thinking I got to show them everything they need to be able to do the user forms project. So when it comes time to do that user form project, you're going to kind of look back to today primarily and say, all right, there's some kind of difficult things. What did Professor Allen do in class because he was getting us ready for it? Okay, questions on the combo box? So the thing I don't like about a combo box is that it's 2 clicks. It takes me 2 clicks to make the choice. I would like, and sometimes, especially if the list is really short. In fact, this is 2 clicks is better than having to scroll and then do 1 click. So I like the combo box if the list is pretty long, but if the list is short, there's a couple other options that we can have. And one of them is going to be a set of option buttons. So let's go ahead and do that as our next example. So let me bring up my toolbox, and option button is this one that kind of looks like a bullseye, but I'm also going to use a frame to go with this. And that's this one over here that looks like a little square with XY written at the top. So let me start off by bringing in a frame. And I'll go ahead and name that one. Actually, I'm not going to refer to the frame through code. So I'll leave the name as frame one, that's fine. But I'll change the caption to be department. Because I think our set of departments is a relatively small set. Look over here on my lists. Oh, gotta get to my list page. Yeah, but there are only 4 different departments that we have here. So that's a reasonable one to put into a set of option buttons. Okay, so now with my frame selected, I'm going to build 4 option buttons into this. So I'll select that first one and then I'll click and drag to draw it in. And then maybe I'll just copy and paste to get the others made. So I think I've got 4 now. I'm a little bit crowded, so let me make that a little bit bigger. I don't know. Don't want it to be too tight or too loose, but I guess that looks about right. Maybe I'm a little crowded to the margin. But if we spend all day watching me try to move these pixels around, we'll never get to the important stuff. Oh no, I duplicated them. I'm gonna leave them just like that, even though I think it is a little crowded here, but that's gonna be okay. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I wanna make it so that these actually say the names of my departments. Now, realize that what I'm doing here is I'm like hard coding my departments onto this form. If they decide to add a new department, that means I've got to come in here and kind of modify this code. So that's a drawback to what I'm doing here. So we really should be using option buttons for things that we don't expect to change with the data. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it for manufacturers because manufacturers is what products are we selling? I'm not sure I really want to use this as an example for department because, we could invent a new department, but that's going to be something that's a bigger change than just, we're adding a new product from a manufacturer we've never had before. So probably the best rule of thumb here is this should be for options that don't ever change, because if the options change, you got to come in here and change the code. Could we make this dynamic so these actually got populated at runtime? The answer is yes, but that's way more complicated than we're ready for in this class. So we could make this dynamic, but we're not going to today. All right, so I am going to refer to each one of these option buttons through code. So let me take the first one and I'm going to call this OPT hunting. And I'm going to change the caption to just say hunting. My next one I'll call OPT outdoor. And caption will be outdoor. I'll just name these for the 4 departments that I have. OPT general. And OPT apparel. Okay, so now they're named, they're labeled, I'm ready to work with them. So option buttons have a value property. So we think of the text box having a text property, the label having a caption, the combo box having a value. Option buttons have a value too, they're Boolean, so it's either true or false. And so when we load up this data, what we're going to have to do is look at which department a particular product is in. Let's see, where's department? It's column C. And we're going to want to set the value property of the option button to true. And that will make that one be the selected one. Now, you'll notice that right now, if I select one of these, when I select another one, it automatically unselects the one that was selected before. And so if I only have one set of option buttons on my form, that's exactly how it would behave. But what if I wanted to have two sets of option buttons? I want one to be selected in each one. That's why you put it into a frame. When you put option buttons into a frame, it limits the kind of the unselecting that happens just to the other option buttons that are in that frame. So if you only have one set of option buttons, you can put them on without a frame, but typically we put option buttons in a frame. Okay, so we won't have to worry about making sure the rest are not set, because setting one of those to true will have the effect of automatically setting everything else in the set to false. All right, so let's come and look at where we show the data. Another comment here, set value for department. Now this seems like a pretty good option for a case statement. So let me select case and let's look at column 3. So data.cells, whatever row we're currently looking at, and column 3, and select. And we're going to say if it's hunting. Now I'm going to use the colon here. Since I only have one line that I'm going to execute as a result of this case, normally what we do is we say, here's the case, and then we've got multiple lines that come in here. But since I only have one line to execute based on this, I'm going to use the colon, which says, let me put more than one statement on a line. And I will then say what I want to do here. And that is to say OPT hunting dot value equals true. So I'm looking at the data on the worksheet and I'm saying, if the value of that is hunting, set the value of the hunting option button to true. And then I've got another one, outdoor, and set option outdoor to true. I've got general, set option general equal to true, and I've got apparel. But the truth is there's only 4. And if I get past these first 3, if it's not one of these first 3, I'm going to assume it must be, actually, let's go ahead and do it. Let's, since general is kind of like the catch-all, let's do it this way. Let's say if it's hunting, outdoor, or apparel, otherwise, check the right one. Otherwise, we'll do general. So I'll say case else OPT general equals true. Questions here? Yeah.
So if you ran this more than once, would the default of all the following sets every single time you run it?
So the question is, do these always kind of go down to false when they're starting? And the answer is yes. When this form starts up, they'll all be false. Now, what we're doing to close the form is we are unloading it. So when we unload the form, it takes that form and dumps it clear out of memory. There's another way to hide that form, make it, it kind of stop showing the form and turn control the VBA interpreter to whatever opened the form. And that's, you can hide the form. And if you hide the form, it doesn't unload it. Hiding the form just makes it invisible, but it leaves it, everything's still there on it. And so when we show it again after hiding it, whatever was there will still be there. We're just going to deal with, I'm teaching you to unload the form altogether. Back when this was written in 1995, computers were slow. And so you know, if we could say, wow, rather than kind of configuring this whole form, let's just leave it kind of in memory and then we can show it again. But computers are so fast now, you got to really have a really, really complex form before you say, wow, it's taking too long to build it from scratch. Let's just hide it and show it. So that's why I'm just showing you how to load and unload. All right, I think that's going to work. Let's at least, we're not saving it yet, but if we're over here on products, this should open up and hunting should be checked. Yeah, hunting's checked. Well, let me scroll down to find one that's not hunting. Here's one on general. General is checked. That looks pretty good. Apparel. Apparel is coming up checked. The only one I haven't checked is outdoor. Did I see? Oh, here's outdoor. You can just check all four of them. Yeah, it's finding all four of them and doing it correctly. Go ahead and go back to the code. Oh, code was showing. So it's kind of a nice complex, kind of a compact block of code that's easy to read. And the beautiful use of the select case state. All right, well, let's go ahead and do the one to save this as well. I'll put a comment in this one, save the department. All right, so now this one, I think we're gonna wanna use an if and else if. So if, and I'm looking at column 3, so I'll pull my data sheet, column 3. Oh, sorry, that's what I'm gonna be writing out to. If OPT hunting dot value equals true, then we're going to set the columns value equal to hunting. Else if, not option hunting, but option outdoor, then we'll set this to outdoor. Apparel, oh, fiddlesticks. Otherwise, it'll be general. So on the way out, it's a little more complex because we're using if else if because we're looking at different things on each condition. So if this one's true, write out hunting. Otherwise, check it outdoors, true, write out outdoors. So, questions here? So now we should be able to change a department for a product through our form. So let's change this first one from hunting to something else. I'll hit play here. It comes up as hunting. I'm going to change it to general. We'll say okay. Ooh. Oh, I never put my end. I never put my end if on. And finish running that out. And that writes out general. So that looks pretty good. Here's the block where we're writing it out. Okay, that's using sets of option buttons. Any questions on option buttons? Okay. Arguably, a better way to have done this would have been to use a list box. So let's look at the next one over is the list box, or it's actually next to the combo box is a list box. So a list box is, in fact, when we say combo box is a combination between a list box and a text box. So a list box just gives us choices to choose from. A combo box lets us type something in, like a text box, or drop down and choose from a list, like a list box. So this is what the combo part of the combo box. And so this one probably should have a label on this one as well. And this one, why don't we call this like the discount or promote? We got a promotion. So I'm going to call this promotion. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy one of these labels. And I will change the caption to say promotion. Now this one's a little interesting because what we've got in our promotions, what we're saying right now is that on this product, there are 2 promotions on it. It's promotion 1 and promotion 4. Well, what are those promotions? Let's come look at the lists and we'll see that the list of promotions 1, 2, 3, and 4 are free shipping, free warranty, buy one, get one free, and then some discount. Some discount percent we'd have to put on there. So now in this case, instead of the actual value that we're seeing here showing up in our list box, we've got to convert that number into the name that's over here, part of the promotions. And we want to make this so that if they decide to add a new promotion, they can just add it to the data here and it'll kind of fill into the system. All right, well, listing our promotion, putting our promotions in here is going to be just exactly the same as how we did it with the combo box. So let's go ahead and take a look at that code. So here is where we're loading the values for the combo box. I'm going to copy that. I guess since I'm doing these in order, I'll put it down below here. And here I'm going to load the promotion. Let's call it load the promotions. We're looking at the same sheet, but instead of looking in column A or E, I'm going to look in column A. And I'm going to add whatever is in column B. This is tied together. So I'm going to continue to execute until we find a blank space and we'll load those in. That should, just making that change there, should give us some promotions. What am I missing here? I probably loaded them in the wrong place. Yeah, I don't want to load if we look, we'll see I loaded the promotions into the manufacturers. So it should look at the very bottom of the manufacturers and see my promotions down here. So I just got the wrong object. So instead of putting it in CBO manufacturer, I better give that object a list. Let me go back and name my object. Right now it's called listbox1. I'm going to call it LST promo. So it's my list of promotions, LST promo. Now back to my code, I'll say LST promo.add item. Now I've got my promotions in there. I definitely don't want this to scroll, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm kind of trimming, so I'll go even a little bit wider. That looks great. So now with just one click, I can select which promotion it has. Oh. But this has the ability to have multiple promotions. How am I going to select multiple ones of these? And the answer is that's just a property of the box. And this is called multi-select. So this has a property. Zoom in on this. There's a property of my list box called multi-select. And there are 3 options. One, the default is just single select. So that means you click on and click off. I'm sorry, it acts like a radio button. When you click one, it unclicks whatever else or unselects whatever else was there. You have multi, which now lets you click them on and off individually. So you click one to turn it on, click one to turn it off. If you click another one, it won't unset what was currently there. In fact, let's just take a look at this. So now that I have it on multi, I can turn them all on kind of with individual clicks. But then there's one called extended. Oh, how am I zoomed in so much? Minus. Let me get back to my form. Multi-select, let me change this to extended. And then this behaves the same way that you would select like multiple files in the, again, Windows, what's it called? The File Explorer. So now you can use like shift click and control click to do blocks at once. So if I was to run this, I could click the first one, then hold the shift key down and click the last one, it would take them all. I think probably, which of those three do you think is the right one to use for this set? You're saying the first one or number one? Because it's there. So yeah, so 0, only to select one. We need to have multiple ones, but there's only 4 here. And how likely is it that it's going to be like, just apply all of the promotions? That seems like an unusual thing. So I think selecting and turning them on and off individually is probably the right, kind of the right level of support for our user here. So I'm going to go ahead and set that one back to, set the multi-select back to number 1. But what you choose here, either having either multi-select or extended select, either one of those would be fine for what we're doing here. Okay, but now it's going to be a little more complex to be able to read the values that are over here in my promotion and decide if that should be selected. So this row that we're on here, it should have number 1 and number 4 selected. Okay. Whew. Let's go ahead and take a look. So we're on the code where we're loading up the data. We've loaded the promotions. Okay, so now we're going to select the correct promotion in the list of promotions. Oh, you know, in fact, we may select that right when we're loading it. Let's do that. Okay, in fact, let me do this. I'm going to put a stop here. Don't do this along with me. I just want you to watch this. That's happening while it's loading, so I can't stop there. I'm going to put another button on my form to be able to run some code just to demonstrate some stuff. So let me just put another command button on here. And this will stop. Okay, so this should let us load up the form. And then I should be able to hit this command button. That'll take me into break mode here. So now I should be able to look at some things. So I've got list promo. Now, there's a property here called list. So when I say add item, it's actually filling the items into the list. Combo Box has the same thing. So there's a list property here, and this list property is actually an array. So this property is not just a single value, it's an array that's holding all of the items that are in the list. So what I want to do here is I want to look at just one of them. So let me look at the first one. So parentheses, I'll put the 1 here. So free warranty is the number 1 item in the list. So what does that tell you about the indexing on this array? Yeah, this is a 0-based array. And it's a part of the reason that I wanted to teach you arrays in the sense of 0-based arrays, because it's always going to be a 0-based array when you're working with this list property. Even if you have option explicit set to option base 1 at the top, it doesn't change how this array indexes. Okay, and so looking at my promotion here, I just need to know if I want to boy, if it's number, not if it's number one. So this would be the first one in the list because they start counting at one in the way the promotions are numbered, even though it's number 0 over here. But you know, there's another thing I want to show you first. Let's look at me dot list promotion. There is a selected property. The selected property is also an array, but it's a Boolean array. It's exactly the same size as my list, and it's going to hold a bunch of falses by default. But I can turn any one of those on, I can turn any one of those entries to true, and we will see it select the value over here in the list box. So let me say selected sub 0 equals true. When I execute this line, it should make this one get selected. That's how I select an item in a list box through code, is by setting the corresponding position in the selected array to true. I can set the last one to true, and I could set, you know, each of the others. So if I wanted to have them all on, but turn off the number 2, 1, the buy one, get one free, I can just toggle those by setting that position in the selected array to either true or false. So we have these two parallel arrays. One is held in the property called list. It's actually the text for the list. One is in the property called selected. It's just a Boolean value, true or false, to say whether that item is selected. How do we change that? Through code, like I just showed you, or what's the other way to change what's in the selected array? How would the user change what's in the selected array? Yeah, by actually selecting it, the interface, changing it there changes it in the selected array as well. So we can use that selected array to set the initial values, and then the user will change that, and we'll have to read that selected array to decide what to write out to the worksheet. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of look at what's here in my promotion cell right when I'm loading the values into here. So rather than load them all up and then kind of looking through again to see which one should be checked, I'm going to say, no. Right at the moment when I put in free shipping, I want to check and see, should free shipping be selected? And if it is, I'll select it right at that moment. Okay, so I'm not going to do this as a separate process. I'm going to integrate it. I'm going to integrate it into here. Okay, so right here, here's the line where I've just added the item into my list box. So now the next thing I want to do is I want to check to see, should it be selected? So let's do some kind of if statement. If something, then, and if, we'll come back to think about what this is going to be here in just a minute. But if that does tell me it should be selected, let me just go ahead and select it. So I'm going to say LST promo dot selected property. What am I going to put here? Which item is it? Go ahead. Subtract 1 from what? Oh, okay. So still we've got to figure out, we've got to make that connection between the 1-based list number and the 0-based array number. But what I'm looking at now, let's assume that we've figured that out. We haven't figured that out yet, but assume we figured that out. How do we know which number is going to be selected here? And the answer is, maybe it's a little bit, it's not especially straightforward, but we're doing this right when we add the item. So we're inside this loop. So as soon as we add the first one, I'm going to check and say, should that be checked? If it should be checked, what's the number? No, it's not R, because R is starting at 2 and it's reading through the sheet over here. So it's going to be, 2 through 5, but we could adjust from R. What's that? Yeah, we could take it as R-2. That would do it. It's simple. I like it. but it doesn't show you the next thing I was going to show you. So I'm going to show you another property of the list box. So right, R-2 is probably better than what I'm about to show you. But what I'm going to show you is going to teach you something new. Okay, so my list, LST promo, has a property called list count. Let's imagine that this is happening on the very first one. So as soon as I add this in, what do you think my list count is going to be? Yeah, list count will be 1. Now, so when list count is 1, what there's only one item in the list. What's the index for my selected array that I should be using? 0, right? And so I'm going to subtract 1 off of this. I have never thought to use R-2 here, and it would be better code. It's shorter code. I think it's clearer. But this is to introduce you to that there's a property called list count. You can ask how many items are in the list because every list has a list count property. All right, let me just go ahead and put true on here for now. So that will always evaluate to true. And when I run this, it should, if I've done this right, it should show them all as selected. So even though ultimately I'm trying to get just number 1 and number 4 selected, for now, I'm just saying always selected. So let me go ahead and run this. LST promo, what was? Oh, I'm sorry. I've got to set that to true, equals true. I was referring to the property without doing anything with it. So I'm looking at the selected array. I'm telling it which one I'm interested in, and I'm going to set that equal to true. There we go. So now they're all coming up selected. So what that means then is that we just have to put a condition here that will only let us in when the promotion that's showing that 1,4, when it's the number 1 or the number 4 promotion that we've just added. Okay. This is pretty complex. Let me just take a break right here and show me how are you following this example right now, 0 to 5. 0 is I'm way lost. 4 and 5, I totally got it. 3, I think 3 is okay to be. Okay, so it's not, you're following me pretty well, okay. So this next part's gonna be a little bit complex. But what I wanna do is I wanna look for, so if my list count is 1, I wanna see if there's a 1 in this cell. Well, how am I gonna look at the text? How am I gonna look at this, kind of take a close look into the string here and find out if there's a 1 in here? Yeah, there's the in-string function, good. So let me use in-string function. I'm gonna start at the first character, so 1 of whatever that cell is. So that's gonna be looking at my data sheet. And I'm looking in my promotions is column H. So looking at H and looking for, let's just look for the list count. Because list count will be, when I add the very first one, list count is 1, and that's the one I'm looking at. That's number 1. When I add the next one in, it'll be number 2, and so forth. So I just want to know if that's in there. So now this will return the position where it finds it. So I just want to know if that's greater than 0. Because if it's 0, that's how in-string tells me it didn't find it. In-string returns 0 if it didn't find it. Otherwise, it tells me where it. I don't care where it is in the list. If it's in the list, that's all I'm after. And apparently, I dragged that down instead of copying it. Whoops. Okay, I was on one that had no promotions, and no promotions are selected. become one that has just 2 there. Now it's coming up with free warranty selected. I'll run this one and it's coming up with free warranty and some discount selected. Whew. That looks pretty good, except for one thing. I think I would be okay here if they don't ever have more than 9 different promotions. And I can't think of 9 different promotions. So I might think this is good enough. But if I was a marketing student, I could probably think of lots of different promotions. Anyone here in marketing? Oh, so what do you think? Is there more than 9 promotions we could think of? Did you say yes? Yeah, okay. So what would be the problem if I have a promotion in here that says, hey, this isn't promotion, or let's say this isn't promotion 1, this is promotion 10. This has promotions 10 and 4 on this. What's going to be the problem? That's right. It'll find the 1 as a part of the 10. And it'll say, oh, yeah, promotion 1 is here, but it's not. Promotion 10 is here. Ooh. So it might be nice if we had like a comma at the beginning and a comma at the end. We're not going to do this. But if we had a comma at the beginning and a comma at the end, then what we could do is we could look for not just the list count, but comma, the list count, comma. And then that would prevent us from accidentally finding promotion 1 when we look at a promotion 10, because now we're looking for the delimiter, the number, and the delimiter. For a moment, let's assume that we're going to have those commas in there. And so what I'm going to do is what I'm looking for in the list is not just the list count. Let me come and concatenate on the end of this a comma. And I will concatenate before my list count a comma. This gets a little bit convoluted here because we're concatenating in commas and we're using the commas to separate the arguments for in string. But here is the third argument here. It says whatever the list promo is, or whatever the list count is, with a comma on each side. So now, if we had the leading and trailing comma here, that would take care of that problem for me. So now, when it looks for, when I'm adding the first one, it's not looking just as, it's not saying, is there a 1 in there? It's saying, is there a comma, 1 comma? And that would successfully kind of get me down to I'm identifying and saying, yeah, that really is promotion 1. We're okay? Go ahead.
Would you need a comma in front, or could you just have the back comma?
So the question is, will we need a comma in the front, or could we just get by with a back comma? And the answer is, if this was promo 11, having just the back comma wouldn't do it for me, because it would find 1 comma. I had to have them both. Now, the problem is these commas, we don't want these commas to be there. That would be weird. That's not right. So instead of letting these commas live in the data, well, let's just put the commas in there for the search. So when I'm looking at that list there, don't just look at what's in the cell, but let's put a comma on the front and a comma on the back of this as well. Just for the search. I'm not changing the data there. It's just for what I'm actually looking at the search. So I'll concatenate on a comma here. And I'll concatenate a comma here. So now what are we actually looking at? We are looking at whatever is in the cell with a comma on the front and a comma on the back. And we're looking for whatever our list count is with a comma on the front and the comma on the back of that. Oh, that's pretty complex. It's not terribly complex, but that's involved. That'll work. Probably should have ran that so that it showed it actually would find the 10 there, but that should still then just bring up now number 4. It's not errantly picking up number 10. There is no promotion 10. If I change it back to 1, it should pick that one up as well. If I'm on it when I run. Okay. Yeah. definitely not the simplest code we've written. And maybe I'm going to go ahead and break this, but breaking it's going to make it a little more complex as well. I'm going to break right after this, the next argument. So that's going to just split that line. Okay. On this question of how we're doing this search to find out if that's a promotion we should be listing, just show me scale of 0 to 5. How comfortable are you with that? It's a pretty complex manipulation. Looks like folks that are voting are mostly high. Some are a little bit low. If you're kind of low below 3 on this, then I think take some time, kind of step through the code and kind of go little by little. Feel free to talk to me or a TA about it as well. Okay, how much time do we have left? Got about 7 minutes. Okay, so let's do this. You'll notice that we have a discount column over here. And this is like connected to promotion number 4. Promotion number 4 says there's going to be a discount. Well, then we probably should have a discount percent over here. So let's go ahead and give ourselves a way to put in that discount percent. And this will be the last thing that we do today. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe just copy this label. And change the caption on that label to say discount percent. I'll bring in a text box. And this one we will name TXT, we'll just call it TXT percent. Now, what I'd really like, oh, we haven't saved this out yet. Before we, this is just kind of fun to make this work, but we got to make sure we're saving this out. We may not have time to actually get the discount percent doing everything I'd like to do. But we definitely got to save this. So let's go back to saving. And let's think about what we have to do to save. Let's see. Save the department. Let's save the promotions. Okay, what are we going to have to do to save? Case isn't going to be I'm not seeing exactly how that's going to be especially relevant here. But what we need to do is we need to scan through that whole list of the selected array in my list box. And I just need to look through and say, oh, look, is it true? If the selected is true, then it's selected for a particular location. And then we've got to build the right number to go on there. So let's build ourselves a little array here. I'll just declare a variable here, dim x as an integer for x equals 0 to LST promo dot list count -1. So if there's 4 items in the list, my indices are going to be 0 through 3. And let me also just declare a temporary variable that I'll use as a string. That'll start off as an empty string. Okay, so now I'm going to say if I want to now look at the selected array to ask if that item is selected. If LST promo dot selected sub x is equal to true, then what are we going to do? Temp, this temporary string, just a string variable I'm going to use here to kind of build up the list of promotions. Temp is going to be equal to what it used to be. So starting off, it'll be a blank string concatenated with, if we just say x here, then on the very first one, we're looking at the number 0 item in the array. And that's going to correspond to free shipping, which is number 1. So if the 0 item is selected, what value do I want to write into my cell? I want to write the 1 there, so it's going to have to offset these by 1. So let me just go ahead and make sure that happens first. So I'll bind that together and +1 onto my array. Temp equals temp plus concatenated with a comma, and then putting on that number. So that should be good, except it's going to give me an extra comma at the beginning. So as we go through that, it's only going to add on an index here if that's one that's selected. So let me go ahead and run this and see if it's actually saving correctly. So I'll add another one in here. We'll say okay. And I didn't save anything. Oh, I never wrote that out. Thank you. So cell that we're writing to is column H. So I'll come after my loop. I'm writing out to column H, whatever I have in temp. And I'll select just the first two. And I still missed it. Oh, thank you. I'm flustered because we're almost out of time. 1, 2, okay. Good. All right. So it's put my 1 and 2 in, but it's always going to have an extra comma here on the front. So all I'm going to do is tell it to skip that lead comma. So instead of writing out temp, I'm going to write out the mid of temp, just starting at the second character. That's okay if there are 2 characters. So that should be okay for that case. We probably still have to do something if there's none selected. That's probably going to throw an error if there's none selected. So let's give that a try. Oh, it liked it okay. I don't know. Let's give it a try. What happens if only number 4 is selected? It puts in number 4. Okay, so that I thought this might, if there was nothing in it, I told it to start the second character, I thought it might give an error, but it just gives me a 0 length string, which is exactly what I want it to do. So there is us saving the promotions. Oh, that takes us to the end of class today. But this, I've shown you now enough to be able to do the user forms project. Any final questions? Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.